Okay guys, the first thing we're gonna do on this project is we're gonna turn our ball of clay into a slab. And if you remember, a slab is a flat piece of clay that is a little bit thicker. And we do wanna add some texture to our slab today, but you can, and we're gonna be sharing our texture mats, but you can start by taking your fist and with the soft part of the fist, banging it down. You can flip it to get both sides, and when your slab is getting a little bit bigger, then you have a couple options. You can use a roller, and this is helpful if you'll stand up when you do this. And now I don't want to go any thinner, or really I might have already gone a little thin, but you want to think of it like keeping it as thick as a cookie. And then I'm going to put one of my texture things on here. I've got this one, I've got this placemat, and we have other choices too. You can bang it on, you can press some texture on. We'll have a lot of different things at your table that you guys can use. You just don't want to go too deep. Like I wouldn't want to use this and cut into it because I want my mat to be, or I want my slab to be sturdy. So you could gently put a smaller mark. You could use some yarn and roll it on. Okay, so now I've got some texture on my tile, and I'm going to use my template to cut it out. You can see that I didn't quite make mine big enough. It's okay, I'm not going to worry about it too much. Okay, so I'm going to hold my popsicle stick straight up and down like a soldier and march him all the way down to that side, and then pull this off. Do the same thing on the other side. Because if you hold him at the angle and cut in, it's going to cut some of your tile away. So just remember to hold him straight up and down and march him around all the sides of your tile. And now you have a cool textured tile background. And if you want to add anything else, you can still go back and add to it. I'm going to set my tile aside, and I'm going to use my scraps to roll a coil. So rolling a coil in clay is just like making a Play-Doh snake. You can just put your hands on it and go back and forth. You could roll it like this. You could try rolling it in your hands. And I'm going to make my initial in the clay, and your initial is the first letter of your name. So I could use A for Andrea, I could use L for Larson. You guys can pick which initial you want to do. I think I'm going to do an A. You can kind of see if it's going to be big enough, then you can go ahead and cut some off with your popsicle stick. And I'll save this for the inside of the A, and I can keep rolling this one. So since we're looking at contrast this quarter, I'm going to have contrast with the texture in mind. I have a really textured background, and I'm going to try doing a smooth letter to give me some contrast. You guys don't have to do it that way. You could try doing contrast in a different way. So if I were to just take my A and stick it on there, when it fired in the kiln, it would not stick on. So we have to score and slip. And with this project, I think using the toothbrush to score and slip is going to work out. So this is kind of a, you kind of get the scoring and the slipping together. But I'm going to go ahead and say our rhyme. Scoring is boring, but I make lots of lines. You guys can repeat that. Slipping is dipping, and I like it just fine. So I've got my score and slipping on there, and I'm going to kind of lay it on my tile and lightly press down. And it leaves me a little mark that I can see. So I'm going to take my toothbrush and score and slip where I left that mark. And if you want it, if you really like the other way that we score and slip, you can use your other tool to do some bigger lines. You've scored and slipped, you're going to lay that down and press it down. And the last part of the process is to smooth it on. If you have a lot of texture, that might be a little tricky, but you can use your popsicle stick and kind of smooth it on a few places to get it on there a little bit stronger. and press it down really good. And then I'm gonna make the middle part of my A. Scoring is boring, but I make lots of lines. Slipping is dipping, and I like it just fine. And then this part will be a really good spot to smooth. You can smooth this. Smoothing is soothing. It relaxes the mind. So once you've got your initial scored and slipped onto your clay tile, you are gonna take all these little spikes that are sticking out. They're soft now, but when they come out of the kiln, they're gonna be super sharp. So we are gonna smooth all those down. See where I cut too deep and it's kind of a little bit broken there? What you can do to fix that is turn on the back and smooth it over. So even though we have our initials on here, I think we still need to write our names because we might have the same initial as somebody else. So I'm gonna write my name on the back, and then you're gonna bring it up to me. We only have a few of these tools, so we're gonna have to share, and we're gonna put a little hole in each corner so that we can hang these after we glaze them. And we'll bisque fire these, and then we'll glaze them some beautiful colors. And there you go. Today is glazing day. Your tiles are out of the kiln. Look at these and notice what is different. What has changed from the last time? Listen to this. If you guys remember last time when you finished them, they were soft. They were called greenware at that point, and they then dried and they were more of a grayish color, and when they dry, they become really fragile. They could easily break. But we put them in the kiln. So here's our kiln right now. It's firing. You can see it's on 1,934 degrees, and it is firing some other greenware. And then that changes it into a chemical change, so it's hard like this, and we call it bisqueware. And now we're gonna get to put some glazes on it to give it this nice, beautiful, shiny color. And we are gonna be thinking about contrast still, and also emphasis. So my letter that I had last time was L for Larson, and you can see that I have some contrast because this L is a dark color. It really stands out, so that kind of gives it some emphasis from the background. And the background, it's contrasted with the background because the background has a lot of different patterns and colors on it. So when you guys are working on yours, I want you to think, how can you emphasize either the letter or the background, and how can you give that some contrast? So just like how the clay turned from being sort of grayish and wet to then brittle, then after it got out of the kiln, it's hard and white and sounds a little bit more sturdy. Your glaze is also going to undergo another transformation because it's going to get fired again in the kiln, and that's the glaze firing. This one is called the bisque firing, and this, after it gets glazed and before it turns shiny, that's the glaze firing. So I found this little sculpture, this little guinea pig I made last year that I didn't ever finish glazing him. And he is going to be, when he's finished, black and white and brown, but he's going to be shiny like this. So glaze will look different after it's been through the firing. It goes even hotter than our bisque fire. So it will go up to 2,000 degrees. Well, sometimes there are glazes that are totally different. See this red color? This is going to turn blue in the kiln, but if I put it on my pot, it's going to be this red color. So you really have to know what you're putting on. But for the ones that we're using today, it's not going to be so drastic. We're using these stroke and cloak glazes, and you can see that the test tile is very similar to the color that is in the bottle. So that helps us give a big clue. It will turn shiny, and just like the little guinea pig, see he's, this is a black, this is this black. See how it dries like a gray color, but it really is gonna turn black. So these are the options that you guys have, and these are the colors that they're gonna be. What we're gonna do this time is we've got them all in these watercolor palettes, one for each table. You guys have to make sure that when you're using them, you're giving Mr. Brush his nice relaxing bath in between each one so that the colors stay nice for whoever else is at your table and the other classes that come after you. If you run out, and if your classes earn the privilege, you might be allowed to refill these on your own. If you do refill it, you don't go any deeper than what's here. This one, I accidentally gave it too much, so you want to keep it low. And if you haven't earned the privilege, that you can just raise your hand and I will come refill it. So we're going to use these brushes, are our glaze brushes. There's some thicker ones and some smaller ones depending on what area of your tile that you're working on. And just make sure you wash it off and dry it off on the mat between each color. I'm at my table, I have my newspaper, my artwork. I've walked very carefully to the table with this, made sure that it's mine. I'm sharing with the imaginary people at my table the water and the glazes, but I'm going to put it close to me in the video so that you guys can see. Super important with glaze, we don't glaze the bottom of any of our sculptures, and the reason is that the glaze will stick to the kiln shelf and it will ruin your sculpture and it will ruin part of the kiln. So if glaze accidentally gets on there, it's okay. We'll wipe it off at the end and I'll make sure it gets wiped off before I put it in the kiln. But in the meantime, don't glaze the back on purpose. You also need 2 coats. 2 coats of glaze will do the trick so that it's nice and shiny. So if you notice, this is a test tile that I glazed once the whole way, 2 times from here down, and 3 times from here down. So really 2 is a good number. You can do 3. You definitely don't want to do more than 3 because it can get all melty and melt too much off of your sculpture. So you can do 2 coats of glaze. You don't want to do 1. It's just not enough to make it shiny and have the right color. You want to make sure that every spot on your sculpture is glazed. Even if you want it to be white, you don't want to leave it this white, because when this changes and it's all shiny, the clay also will change color a little bit more yellowish in the next firing because it is hotter. So you want to make sure that every bit is covered, and our normal rules about using Mr. Brush carefully with his hair don't apply. These are kind of the yucky old brushes. They're the workhorse glaze brushes, and you can cram them and jab them into all these crevices. So that is okay on this. So I'm gonna start glazing. I'm gonna go ahead and glaze with 2 coats, the A in white, and then I'm gonna add some details in black and gray, and because I've already done 2 coats of white, I only need to do 1 coat of those detail ones. I'm gonna do the same thing for the background, 2 big coats of the lavender, and then after that, for fun, I'm gonna add 1 coat of some of the blue. It'll mix, so you wanna be careful if you're adding a color on top of the other, that those 2 are gonna look good together.